Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road journey. This week we continue to explore the county of County Durham. Sure, it's got some pretty dire towns contained within, but it's also the birthplace of the railways, which are 200 years old almost to the day, and it all started here thanks to a few northerners with their silly accents. But where is here? Here is Stockton On Tees, where we begin our journey to eventually end up in Sunderland. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and I don't think my guidebook rates Stockton all that much. Simply because despite being a fairly large town of around 65,000, it lists nothing of interest to see or do. And that's most likely because back in the day, Stockton was more about function than form. For centuries, the town was involved in shipbuilding, and as mentioned, the railway started here, so the town was most likely an industrial wasteland. Some might say it still is. To be fair, from the right angle, squinting at night, Stockton is actually quite nice. Not this bit though, because Stockton was not only busy with boats and railways, the chemical industry was a large employer in the town, with a huge chemical works being set up in 1918, initially manufacturing ammonium nitrate or fertiliser, but it wouldn't be long before they moved into the production of all kinds of delightful substances. But the reason for coming here is to take a look at this, the ICI Nitro Prill Tower. What an absolute horror show. I love it. It was built, I believe, in the 1950s, and it was used to convert the salt-like substance ammonium nitrate into what was called a prill, a sort of solid bead. And the reason for doing so is that it was a lot safer to store and transport. It turns out ammonium nitrate is highly explosive, and accidents were commonplace before the process of turning it into a more stable prill was created. Today, the tower isn't used for such purposes, but it is a lovely landmark. Speaking of landmarks, here is one, but we can only look at half of it because this structure straddles the counties of County Durham and North Yorkshire, and we're in County Durham today. Stop looking at that half. Stop looking. You can't. No, don't look at that bit. The Tees Transporter Bridge, known locally as the Transporter, opened in 1911 to provide a method of crossing the River Tees with your vehicle. It does this by way of a gondola which is suspended from the main structure, and when loaded it will move across the river driven by cables. Until its closure because safety in 2019, it was the longest operating transporter bridge in the world, and its historical importance has led to it becoming a grade-listed structure. It's a nice bridge for sure, and one that was created mostly out of necessity. They no doubt wanted to build a more ordinary bridge. It would have been cheaper and easier, but at the time of planning, the shipbuilding industry was still a thing in Stockton, and with larger ships being manufactured, height clearance was the main consideration, leading to the construction of the not-so-ordinary transporter bridge with a height clearance of 49 metres. I don't know what that is. It's time to get on our way, and we'll be heading out of Stockton via the A177, which has a couple of things to note. At the village of Thorpe Thewles, we need to turn off and head through the village if we're to stay on the original route. And further along, there's a dual carriageway section, which is interesting because the southbound side follows the route of the original road, whereas the northbound is built along a new alignment. We can see when compared, the old road is a bit more bendy than the new. Either way, we've no choice but to use the newer road. And that road takes us into Sedgefield, where there's nothing of interest. But a short distance away are the leftovers of an old quarry which was abandoned in the 1930s. It's not clear exactly as to when it opened. It's marked as disused on every old map I can find. But when it was opened, they were extracting magnesium limestone, a sedimentary rock that's found mostly in the northeast of England. It could be used for many things, including road and building construction, but its main use at the time was as an ingredient in refractory bricks. When mixed with other minerals, these bricks could withstand extremely high temperatures and resist corrosion like nothing else on the market, making them perfect for use as a kiln or a furnace lining, and apparently in more modern times they were used on the surface of rocket launch structures. Coxhoe. Grow up. Our next stop brings us to Durham, which surprisingly isn't the county town of County Durham. Nah, just kidding. Of course it is, although it's a city. In the days of my guidebook, it wasn't that large a place with around 17,000 residents. It didn't scale up with the Industrial Revolution, and I think that's because most of the larger scale industries were located out of town in the surrounding villages. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to visit Framwell Gate Bridge, where it notes there's a lovely view. This is the view. No, sorry, wrong way. It must be in this direction we're meant to look. As for the bridge, it's a medieval masonry arch bridge that was built sometime in the 1400s, but it's changed a bit since then because it seems to be missing an arch. There used to be 3 arches on the bridge according to this old painting, but today that's nowhere to be seen, although apparently it does still exist, now hidden and concealed by newer buildings. Interestingly, until 1969, the bridge was one of the main roads in and out of Durham, but it's now been pedestrianised and a new road bridge built to replace it. Did you know that Durham was the place where English mustard originated from? Yeah, mustard has been around for ages, but it wasn't the same as the English mustard that we're familiar with. It used to be all coarse and lumpy. But that all changed in 1720 when a Mrs. Clements of Durham used flour milling techniques to create a fine yellow mustard powder that was hotter and smoother than anything seen before, and she called it Durham mustard. Fast forward some years and the recipe was sold to Coleman's of Norwich. Yeah, that's the one. They're still making and selling the same mustard today. And did you ever notice their cow logo? Well, it's not just any old cow. It's the Durham ox and a nod to the original source of the now world-famous English mustard. And no, America, yours is not the same. As we head out of Durham, we'll be using the A690, which has changed completely since the old days following its upgrade to a dual carriageway. There's not many alternatives available to us, so we're not exactly able to follow the period-correct route, but it'll have to do. If you're wondering what the Durham ox is, it was a famous cow that lived between 1796 and 1807, and it was known for being rather large. So it was just a massive fat cow. Insert your mum joke here. I've no idea why it's associated with Durham. I guess they liked it. I had planned to stop by Houghton-le-Spring, but it's not mentioned in my guidebook, and its most exciting feature is the A690, which runs through the middle of the town. So instead, I've come to take a look at the Penshaw Monument found to the north of Houghton. It's a monument that was built in 1844 to commemorate John Lambton, the first Earl of Durham. He died some years earlier, so never got to see the completed monument, so it was a waste of time. Speaking of dying, in the days of my guidebook, one was able to access the top of the monument via a spiral staircase contained within one of its columns, but this was closed off to the public because in the 1920s somebody fell from the top and ceased to be alive. Today it's a lovely landmark visible for miles around, and if you're thinking it looks like some sort of ancient Greek temple ruin, yes, it does. The architect nicked the idea, took inspiration from temples found in Athens. Before we head into Sunderland, I thought we'd stop by the River Wear or Wear to take a look at a shipwreck known as Crete-Hauser, which is the only surviving example of its type in the UK. What is its type? Well, it's a boat that's made completely out of concrete, of which only 12 were ever completed. The one that we see here was used as a tugboat and was launched in 1919. Wait a minute, did I just say a boat made of concrete? That's exactly what I said, yes. You see, we'd just gotten over a bit of a worldwide disagreement and steel was in short supply, so in some cases concrete was used as the main construction material despite being more expensive. Did it work? Well, Crete-Hauser sailed back and forth to Spain for 16 years without an issue, so I'd say yes. As to how it ended up here, in 1943, during the Second Small Disagreement, it was damaged during a bombing raid, and at the time they decided that the best course of action was to dump it up the river and deal with it another time, which they didn't. Alrighty, it's time to head into Sunderland. I've been putting it off for as long as I can, and we'll be using the B1539, which crosses over the river via a rather lovely bridge that opened in 1909, which, interestingly at the time, was a twin-deck bridge. On the lower deck was the road, and on the upper ran a railway, which seems to me like a very good use of space. It looks quite nice too as you drive across. Add in a cinematic filter and some slow-mo, tasty. In the days of my guidebook, Sunderland was a busy place with over 159,000 residents, yet despite its size, it wasn't considered a city until the 1990s. Back then, the town's size was mostly down to its success within several industries, including the shipbuilding industry, where it said at one point 25% of the world's ships were built here in Sunderland. Unfortunately, that all sank in the 1980s, leading to mass unemployment in Sunderland, not helped by the failure of the coal and glass industries, two other key employers in the town. Basically, it all went tits up. And Sunderland very much wouldn't have recovered if it weren't for the small motorised vehicle manufacturer known as Nissan, who, after some rather serious convincing, set up one of their manufacturing plants on a former RAF base to the west of Sunderland, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they did. The first car was produced at the factory in 1986, although it was more a case of assembling the bits sent over from Japan, overnight parts from Japan. It wouldn't be until 1990 that the first fully manufactured car would appear at Sunderland, the amazing Nissan Primera. If you want to see the first car produced at the Nissan Sunderland factory, a fabulous Nissan Bluebird by the way, then you can, because it's currently being housed at the Sunderland Museum and Winter Gardens, which is also recommended by my guidebook. It was set up in 1846, but it may not appear the same today as it did back then because in 1941 a parachute mine damaged the building, leading to its demolition and replacement in the 1960s, which was then further redeveloped in the early 2000s. Today the museum hosts a variety of exhibits that lean into Sunderland's local history, and the Winter Garden houses over 2,000 species of plants and flowers. And there we are then, guys, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'll be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John, you've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Until then, take care, bye bye. Cars, for f***'s sake.